This question with the hockey player who either gains confidence or loses confidence depending on what they score or whether they miss on a previous attempt is a little bit difficult to map out. So here you've got three shots and the probability of success on the first shot is listed. For instance, mine happens to be 0.55. Yours could be whatever. And then here the probability of scoring on the next one, given they've scored on the previous one, is whatever the probability of success was plus 10%. Alternatively, if you've missed on the previous one, then the probability you'll score on the current one would be the probability of what you would have scored, but decreased by 10%. So making this tree is a little bit difficult. So, I mean, the start is pretty clear. I'm starting with a 55% chance of scoring and then a 45% chance of not scoring. And if I score, then this number here, the probability of scoring a second time, would be the probability of the first plus 0.1. Okay, and then of course, whatever this is, 1 minus that has to be the probability of the alternate, which would be missing the second one given you scored the first. And then continuing on the pattern here, what's the probability that I scored the third one given I've scored both the first and the second one? Well, that would just be here the most current probability of scoring plus another 10%, or in other words, the original plus 20%. And of course, the corresponding probability must be 1 minus this value. Okay, so we've talked about this value, this value, this value, and this value. What about the rest? Okay, so what about the probability that I score after a miss? Now, the most recent probability of scoring is actually here. And so here, what's the probability of scoring after a miss? It would be this just subtracted by 0.1. So here I've got x plus 0.1, and if I subtract 0.1, I just arrive back at x. And of course, this and this need to add up to 1. Finally then, how do I get these probabilities down here? Okay, this probability, the probability of scoring after the most recent miss. So in this case, I've missed, but my probability of scoring used to be x, and then I've missed. So now it's just going to be this x minus 0.1. And of course, these two trees need to add up to 1. Okay, at this point, I've just recently scored. So this probability will just be this probability plus 0.1. And of course, this and this will have to add up to 1. And finally, for the last tree here, my probability of scoring most recently was x minus 0.1, but unfortunately, if I'm down here, I've missed again, and so it will be this probability subtract a 0.1, or in other words, x subtract 0.2. And of course, this and this must equal 1. After you get all these probabilities, sort of a long and drawn out process, then you need to multiply across the tree. So here, this times this times this will get me the probability of 3 goals. Okay, so that's the probability of 3 goals. The probability of 0 goals, this times this times this will get me the probability of 0 goals. When you're talking about the probability of getting 1 or 2 goals, then there are any number of situations. So there's 3 different ways to get 2 goals, and there are also 3 different ways to get 1 goal. But as if you're going for the probability of 2 goals, it's going to be this times this times this, plus this times this times this, plus this times this times this, and correspondingly for the probability of just getting 1 goal. After you have the distribution, you can find the expected value and the standard deviation.